Hello, lovies, and welcome back to a live stream with A Theologica. Derek Bennett, yours truly. Today, and today only, I have with us Shane Almgren. Now, Shane Almgren, say that 20 times, is a longtime friend of mine. I've known him since my days in Nashville. So this was back in my, late 20s, and I'm 45 now. So I've known this kid for many years. Shane is the author of the Trumpland Diaries, as well as his most recent work, The 7 Evangelical Training Principles that promote wild propaganda, dangerous misinformation, and outlandish conspiracy theories. So, just to give you a little bit more background, Shane is an avid drinker and socialite, and a general nuisance to society. You will not like him, but we're going to grit our teeth and we're going to get through this. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my good friend.
Well, howdy, sir.
Hi, Guy. How are you?
Oh, I've been better.
Okay. What's wrong, honey?
Well, I get stuck on this show, and I don't usually have these penciled in on my evenings, and so it's great to be here. I feel like that's a thing I should say to you, but I could do
sure.
It.
I just need you to understand. My therapist has told me how to handle these things. Rather than get angry, I just want to tell you that's very hurtful. That's my pride is taking a little bit of a, you know what I mean? You're kind of chipping away at the old, it doesn't help matters that I'm already, about 2 inches away from being a woman. So
right.
You're just kind of fanning the flames here. It's not nice.
So I validate your feelings. I hear what you're saying. And I think the last time I saw you in person, you were 3.5 inches away from being a woman. So congratulations on progress.
On the shrinkage?
Yes.
Thank you. I've worked, wait, that's not good. Let's change subjects. Let's change subjects.
Stick a pin in it. We'll come back to it.
We're going to put a pin right in there. right in the old, yep. Yes, sir.
So we're off to a good, is this a good start?
This is going really well.
Okay.
I remember a website from way back when during my Nashville days. It was called, it was like a whole list of things that you should never stick in your pee hole. This is completely relevant, right? This is relevant,
right?
And I think my favorite was a Buick LeSabre. Like you just don't try that. Don't do it. Don't leave it to the professionals.
Yeah, that one's kind of counterintuitive, but yeah, you are right.
Exactly. You wouldn't think. Oh, I probably shouldn't. You know what I mean? It's a little. Yeah.
You go, which kind of Buick? Oh, a LeSabre. Okay, yeah.
LeSabre, yeah. That's don't. You know what I mean? Maybe a Honda Civic, but do not with a Buick LeSabre. Don't do it. Shane Almgren.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your background. What was life like for you as a little Shane Almgren?
Ooh, I was never in trouble. I was a great student, and I always minded my parents and my authority figures. I was brought up in the Evangelical church. My parents got saved like right after I was born. And they were both in the Air Force, Shepherd's Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. And as soon as they both got out, they went and enrolled at Christ for the Nations Bible Institute in Dallas, Texas. So we spent 2 years there. I was learning to walk. I was learning to talk in church services, basically. It seemed like 24/7, but I came up in the church. We moved to Wichita Falls. We found a great home church that was, my parents, they were the Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Tuesday, Thursday night, home group, Friday night, youth groups, Saturday morning, men's prayer breakfast. If there was a potluck, if the church was unlocked, we were there. So we were those kind of Christians. I think my dad was just getting into being a deacon there. And then when I was 11, they took us overseas. And so we spent several years in Asia as Christian missionaries. We were in China, Thailand, Hong Kong, and Malaysia. And then we came back to the States in the early 90s. And I continued to do like summer mission trips, went to Russia, got arrested in Russia, went to Jamaica with the youth group. Yep.
Time out. Why did
Yep.
you get arrested in Russia?
Well, how long do we have here?
I figured we go for a good hour, hour and a half, as long as I can fucking stomach you.
I wish I could say that the arrest was actually for religious reasons, but it was a day off. And so we were kind of allowed to just go out and do whatever we wanted. And we had found this kind of back alley bazaar where, you could haggle with the merchants over whatever. And I've always collected swords. And I saw this beautiful sword with a gorgeous like mother of pearl hilt. And I had traded my backpack, my watch, the buddy that was with me. I got him to give him his watch and his belt and like $40 American for this sword. And then we were going back. We were in the subway station and 3 security guards came up to us and asked, "Where'd you get that?" And we, not speaking Russian, just kind of tried to tell them, "Here, we'll show you. And so we took them back to the alley, and it was like the movie, like Indiana Jones, where all the awnings had gone down and it was completely deserted. And I was like, "No, I swear there was 1,000 people here. It was 40 shops a minute ago, and it was gone." And so they arrested us. They had to send a translator, and it turned out that it was an old Soviet artifact that had been stolen from a museum like a month or 2 prior, and it had been flagged. So everybody was on the lookout for it. And so we were in jail in Moscow for about 12 hours. And to get out, we had to sign a confession for crimes against the Russian. They were Russia. They weren't the Soviets anymore, but against the Russian Republic, and promised to never steal priceless artifacts again.
Wow.
For Jesus.
Wow. For Jesus, right. Yeah. Okay, so I had a question and it slipped my mind, but it sounds like Russia's just a little bit sketch. Is Russia a little bit sketch?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Smyrna of Eastern Europe.
Because I've been to jail here in the U.S. and it's a real picnic. How was it there in Russia?
Well, they don't fall for the old sick prisoner thing. If you want to get out, they don't care if you're sick or not. So you can hack and fake vomit all you want, and they don't care.
Okay. So it's pretty nice. Pretty comfy place.
Yeah, they leave you alone.
Okay, very well. So what led you, because you grew up in a pretty day in, day out fundamentalist environment. What led you away from Christianity? What was it that made you say, I don't know about this bullshit?
Can we fill in a little bit of time gap before we get to that?
Absolutely
question?
Not. Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, well, it was great meeting all of you tonight. It was great to meet you, Derek. Thanks for
God damn it, we don't do jokes here, bro.
All right, my bad.
Come on, fill in that gap. Do it, baby.
So yeah, I finished high school. The last 2 years of high school were at a Christian school, and then I went to a Christian college down in West Palm Beach. Palm Beach Atlantic University. And then after I graduated, I had done some international touring, doing like Christian music over in China, and then decided to move to Nashville for music. And it was a couple years into the Nashville experience. Because when I came here, I was still into my Bible thumping days, arguing with people like myself and like yourself whenever I could. There were a number of things that happened all at the same time. One of them was I discovered that the Bible, which is it's a Christian holy book, is written, way back in like the 1700s. Sort of a venerated book. But they told us it was perfect, and then I discovered that it wasn't. And
this is news to me.
Yeah. Well, have you heard of the book? Some people call it the good book.
God, it sounds vaguely familiar. I want to say that I've seen it advertised on Amazon. It's kind of like a Lord of the Rings type deal,
with a lot more incest and pornography.
That's my thing. That's very much my thing. Do go on about that.
Read Song of Solomon. Oof. Way better than 50 Shades of Grey. How do you feel about donkeys?
What's the line there? Oh God. I know. I remember whose emissions were like that of donkeys. I remember that part. So that's quite a squirt gun. That's rocking it out.
That hits you right in the eye when you come across it.
Yes, sir. When the moon hits your eye. There's my singing voice. Who's a fan? Raise your hand. 1 if you like my singing voice. Type 1 if you like my singing voice. There's going to be a lot of 2s.
It was that, anyways, to answer your question, it was that, and also growing up in the church, the very conservative version of it. One of the things, like, there's 2 things that we are told that we're against. That's abortion and homosexuality. And we had very, very strong opinions on how we felt about gay people. And it was easy to hate them because I didn't know any. And people you don't know are the funnest and easiest ones to hate. And got to know, just working in the entertainment industry, got to know quite a number of gay people. And one of the guys that I became really, really close with, I knew he came from a Baptist family. And I had sat him down one day and I said, bro, I'm concerned about your soul. So this is coming from a place of love. You know what the Bible says about homosexuality. You know where you go. So why do you choose to be gay? If you know, I love you. And he looked at me like I had 2 heads. And he goes, dude, if there was any choice in the matter, I'd choose not to be gay. Do you know how freaking hard it is to grow up in Tennessee in the South with like Southern Baptist parents? And it's the most miserable thing in the world. I wouldn't wish this upon anyone. And I had never considered that before. And I was like, I think I know better about what you think than you do. So let me tell you what's really up. And he's like, no, I mean, if you want to know for real. And over getting to talk with him for, days, weeks, months about it, I realized that none of the people who had spoken into my life about that group had any idea anything about that group. And the more time I spent with them, the more compassion I felt for them and the more understanding. And then the angrier I got at the Christian group because it's not just silent judgment, it's treatment too. And once it gets into behavioral realm, then, you get defensive for your friends and the people that you care about. And that was, it was that situation and the Bible contradictions at the same time that kind of coalesced and started the wheels spinning, that just made me a little bit more susceptible to the other things that started coming in.
So Pat Robertson nailed it. It was the gays that did this to you. It was a gay invasion, and they got you. They totally got you.
Well, we knew it was either going to be the gays or the Smurfs, and like a 50-50 shot.
So I do wonder, because I know that your dad, old Ray, is still pretty strongly religious. How has your family reacted to your apostasy?
Well, they have taken it a bunch of different ways. Some of them, like my sister, who's still my sister lives in Japan. She's what we would probably call a liberal kind of Christian. Yes. She's the Christian that gives Christians a good name. And yes. She spent her whole life rolling her eyes at my antics anyways. So I don't think it bothered her much. My dad is also one of those people who just kind of makes you feel, he's like the kind of Christian you're like proud to introduce your non-Christian friends to, because he kind of gets it. I think he's still praying for me quite a bit. Sure. I think my mother's probably in denial about it. So, but it's a conversation we just avoid pretty much in the family.
Do you have any particular favorite? You don't need to take me through a whole list. Just any particular favorite contradictions in the Bible that come to mind?
I'll tell you the exact one that first hit me, and I know I think I used it when we did this presentation back in March. I was reading through the book of John, and I was reading, you get to, it's early in John, for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. And, Jesus, I didn't come into the world to judge the world, but to save the world. And then you get a couple chapters later and he says, for judgment, I have come into this world. And then later he says, the Father judges no man, but he has committed all judgment to the Son. And then a little bit later he goes, I judge no one. And I go, if you ask somebody, if you're on a game show and the question was, is Jesus a judge or not? The right answer would be yes, but we would also accept no. So when I saw that, I was like, well, this can't be right, because there can't be things. And I was like, let me go back and just read some more stuff. And I went back and I spent, I don't know, like 6 months doing Genesis, started at the beginning all the way to Genesis to maps. Read it all the way through, just like writing, taking notes, and ended up with like 60 pages of handwritten notes of this thing contradicts that thing. And, another favorite example was, you read through the Old Testament back when God used to interact with us, and it wasn't an emotional something internal that we felt. He was externally there. He had to come down to see what was going on.
Yeah,
You hear a noise up in heaven. The wickedness of the Smurfs, and we have to go down to see how bad the wickedness is. He would take siestas, show up and sit with Abraham. He'd wrestle with people. He would talk to Moses face to face as one speaketh to a friend. And he appeared to so many of the Israelites who thought that seeing God and hearing his voice was a death sentence. And, hearing them go, we can't believe it. We have seen God and heard his voice, and we've lived to tell about it. And then you get to the New Testament, it says, no one's ever seen God or heard him. Nope, can't happen. And you go, y'all didn't consult with each other before you wrote your separate books.
I distinctly remember you sending me that document, which was just pages and pages of contradictions. I still have it in my old Hotmail account that I still use. I still have that document saved in there, and I remember you saying these are contradictions that I actually tried to harmonize myself and found that I could not do it. So yeah, it's a doozy, and you need to publish that sometime as well.
Well, I think there's. After I had come up with it, I had thought about writing something, and then I just discovered so many other books that had already been published. I think the Encyclopedia of Biblical Inerrancy pretty much covered it. So I don't know what I would add to it unless it was just like snarky commentary. But somebody else, I could do that. But somebody else has already found all the contradictions. I didn't uncover anything new. I found them for myself.
So, given your background, you have a whole lot of insight into the indoctrination process. Thus, did you write your book? So, I want you, if you can, to just take us through one by one, give us some brief commentary on each of these 7 evangelical training principles that promote wild propaganda, dangerous misinformation.
Yeah, you got to make sure you get the title in there. It's Conspiracy Christianity. Yeah, you led off with the tagline.
Can we start from the top of the show? Can we
let's
start?
Yeah, let's back
We're
out.
only 19 minutes into it. We'll just do over.
Let me turn my chair around, and then we'll just start with the gays. We'll go right from there.
Yep, start with the gays.
Okay. So here it is right here. This one is not for resale. This was the one I had to prove. This came about during it was right after Trump announced that he was running for president in 2015. And right after the election, the Pizzagate conspiracy got started. Do you remember this?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Do we need to explain that to anybody? Does everybody know who that is?
I'm sure many do, but please regale us with Pizzagate, please.
Okay, so during the 2016 or the campaign, the run up to the election, the Russians or whoever hacked the Democratic National Convention's emails, and they published them all on WikiLeaks. And Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, there was a number of emails in what was published that alluded to pizza. And internet people, being internet people, decided that it could not have possibly been a bunch of campaign staffers discussing what to order for lunch, but it was secret code word for child sex trafficking. And I realize that that's kind of like saying that's bad for the YouTube algorithm, like if you say sexual assault or anything. So can we just say trumped as shorthand for
I'm good.
SA?
I'm good with this. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Appreciate your consideration.
Yeah, I don't want to mess with your algorithm. So John Podesta and Hillary Clinton and all the Democrats were Trump trafficking all these kids. And so cheese pizza was code word for boys, or for girls, sorry, and pepperoni pizza was code word for boys. And then somebody said, well, even though these are, naturally, unfortunately, nobody mentioned sausage. They decided it'll come to you.
Hey-o.
So anyways, the conspiracy that developed was that the Democrats were all running a child Trump trafficking ring out of a pizzeria in Washington, D.C., and they settled on this family pizza joint called Comet Ping Pong Pizza. It was, it was staffed with college kids. It had a couple ping pong tables in there. And this spread like wildfire to where Comet, like the owners, the employees, they were getting death threats. They were getting bomb threats. The right-wingers came out every night with like picket signs. They were protesting anything across the political spectrum they didn't like. Gay marriage is a sin. Abortion is murder. All of this stuff. And finally, December of 2016, this has been going on for like 2 months. Some guy from South Carolina drove up to DC with an AR-15 to go free the children in the name of Jesus. He was called himself a soldier for Christ, and he went in and opened fire. Thankfully, didn't hurt anyone. He was trying to blow the lock off what turned out to be a storage room door in an establishment that didn't even have a basement. And this didn't make people like stop and go, okay, that was a whacked out conspiracy. They just moved it to a different location.
Sure. Yep.
And eventually, that was at the tail end of 2016. As we got into 2017, that's when QAnon surfaced. And the whole premise of QAnon was like the Pizzagate conspiracy on steroids, which was, it wasn't just the Democrats in Washington, D.C. doing Trump trafficking of kids. It was all of the global elite, world leaders, all the Democrats, naturally, Hollywood celebrities like Tom Hanks for sure, and Justin Bieber. Those are two of the most evil ones.
I hate when Tom Hanks does that. I hate it when he does that.
He's a shifty dude.
He's shifty.
So the whole premise of this expanding conspiracy was all of these were satanic pedophile cannibals who were running a global child Trump trafficking ring. And Donald Trump had uncovered this and was waging a personal war against it. And there was going to be a great reckoning. He was going to round everybody up. Nancy Pelosi and Oprah and everyone, they were going to get, their sins were going to be uncovered. And as time went on, the mythology of QAnon, it just kept getting fleshed out more and more. And the more details that came out, the more absurd it got, the more it started contradicting itself. But it was all my right-wing evangelical friends and family who were sharing this all over Facebook. And they would come and basically like proselytized him. Like, dude, do you know what you got to take the red pill, man. You got to take the red pill. You got to open your eyes like I did. The whole thing, man. It's a sham, man. When you take the red pill, wake up to what's going on. There's a storm coming. And I was like, so much of this stuff is so quickly and easily debunked. Why is it that the people who imagine that they're guided by the Holy Spirit, it's spiritual insider trading. Their spiritual stock portfolio should be outperforming ours. If I don't have any, if I'm not appealing to any deities and I'm living my life in such a way with rejection of, the spirit that you said is the one that talks in, I shouldn't be getting better information than you are. So if I can figure out that this is nonsense, why is it all you guys who are the first in line to come up with this? And then in 2021, Pew Research had published a survey, a national survey that listed people most likely to buy in and people least likely to buy in. And down at the bottom of the list were atheists. And at the very top of the list, the single greatest predictor of people who were buying into QAnon nonsense was evangelical Christians.
That's probably a coincidence.
I'm sure it was. No. I said that wrong. It wasn't. It was not. What I had to think about is not if that was a likelihood, but why was it likely? Mm-hmm. And so I did spend some time. I reflected back on my upbringing and my time in the church, and growing up in a Christian house, going to a Christian school, hanging out with Christian friends. The messaging that we get from all these different parents, teachers, authority figures, youth pastors, there are very specific thought training techniques that our minds get flooded with from a very young age, and it doesn't stop. We just keep getting hit with the same messages over and over and over. So I pinpointed the 7 thought training principles that we're hammered with that explain why evangelicals, more so than any other demographic, are most likely to believe just absurd nonsense.
So what is number one? What's number one on that list?
Oh gosh, I completely forgot something. Before we get into this sacred discussion, out of just reverence for my flying spaghetti monster deity.
Oh, please.
Blessed be his name. I don't, his noodly appendage watch upon us. Out of reverence, I do want to cover my head as we discuss this.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, meatballs.
Thank you, Jesus.
This feels, let me lock this in place so it's not wiggling around all unprofessionally. There we go. Do I look pious now?
Yes, it's now we can do this.
Now we can do this. I feel holy.
I just feel a big sigh of relief. This is the way you do it. This is the way.
So the number one training principle was, let's see, let me go through them in my head real quick. Actually, let me just open this up to make sure we go in order.
Yeah, you wrote a book on it.
Yeah, I did. Oh, it's got my name on it too. How about that?
Yeah, see, that was
smart.
Weird.
It's got your name in it.
I'd have left that out.
Yeah, in
You'll
hindsight.
know next time.
So training principle number one was that belief without evidence is a good thing. And the point I made that when we start off in the church, on Sunday mornings when we go to Sunday school. And so all the lessons are age appropriate. And they basically have a greatest hits of Bible stories. And it's, Noah's Ark, David and Goliath, Adam and Eve, Moses and the 10 Commandments. And I mean, there's like 20 stories that they just,
all true
repeat. Yeah. And one of the stories is Doubting Thomas. And, for those who are unfamiliar with the gospel tale, after Jesus' resurrection, he appeared to all the disciples at dinner one night when Thomas wasn't with them. And then they came back and told Thomas and said, "We've seen the Lord." And he goes, "I don't believe you." And he said, "Unless I put my finger in the holes from his hands and his side, I'm not going to believe." And then the next evening, Thomas was with them at dinner, and Jesus appeared to the group again. And, then Thomas believes and he falls and worships the Lord, and Jesus publicly shames him in front of his friends. He said, "Well, you believe because you saw, but blessed are those who believe without seeing." And the church authorities don't really leave it. I mean, the lesson for that day is it's good to believe things without having any evidence for them. But they don't just leave it off in the context of this Thomas and Jesus story. They kind of use it as like a teaching moment where it's a declaration of your Christian piety. The more things that you can believe, that you can acquiesce to just accepting without requiring any evidence for, it's sort of an outward demonstration of your inner piety. And so we're conditioned from those of us who showed up in Sunday school, 4 years old, from 4 years old until we decide that we're done with it. It's believing things without evidence. It's not just not necessary. The alternative is actually preferable. It's not like, you could believe with evidence or you could believe without evidence. They're like, without evidence is the preferred method. And so we just get used to hearing stuff and going, I'm not even going to ask for any evidence because I'm not a heathen.
As I've always said, if you don't need evidence to believe something, then you can believe anything for which there is no evidence. That's the corollary. That's where you go. That's where it gets you.
And so one of the things that I'd done in the book is I tried to, for every training method that I highlighted, I tried to give real world examples, because the reason that I wrote this in the first place was, conspiracy theories aren't anything new. Go back to the 40s, whatever, Roswell, JFK, the CIA was involved. Elvis isn't dead. He and Tupac are recording an album. 9/11 was an inside job. The moon landing was fake. Bigfoot is real. And these are all various levels of plausibility or absurdness, but people weren't, if you believed any of them, it didn't really affect day-to-day life. But with the rise of QAnon, there were, we mentioned Pizzagate, but the Nashville bombing that happened on Christmas here 2 years ago, the guy had written like Q manifestos. The guy that broke into the Pelosi's house and attacked Paul Pelosi with a hammer, he was a big Q fanatic. The people who were plotting to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, 13 guys that were all hopped up on Q ideology. And it was like, this is a new realm of conspiracy that's actually spilling out into society, and it has tangible consequences. So it's hard to sit idly by and just let people have their conspiracies if they want them. Because now, if you buy this conspiracy and you grab an AR-15 and come to where I'm eating dinner and just open fire to free kids that aren't there, you're really impacting society in ways that have horrific, tragic consequences. Obviously all the people who buy this aren't going to read the book. And it wasn't even written for the people who do. It was more written for the people who don't believe at all, just going, guys, I understand it's really easy to get really frustrated with these people and just like think of them as sickos or psychos or whatever. It's not entirely their fault, because we are trained in the church very, very specifically. So hear me out. Have some compassion. Love the believer, hate the belief. Here's why we do the nutty stuff that we do.
Understood. I do want to ask you, this is not directly related to what you're addressing in the book, but what the mentality you're describing, which is, prioritizing belief in the absence of evidence. Yeah, that does describe your average Joe Christian. But what do you think, I'm just curious, of these Christian apologists who actually attempt to say, oh no, evidence is important to us, and that's why we're really glad we've got it?
Well, I've got this really sneaky, tricky, savvy follow-up question. Show it to me. Because I think one thing that we firmly established right after the 2020 election, and kind of everyone was going, oh, there's so much evidence of voter fraud. And I go, well, what's your evidence? And this was actually a conversation that I had with a family member. who said, I was reading Sports Illustrated, and the golfer Payne Stewart, his parents had a friend whose doctor wrote his death off as COVID, but it wasn't really. I was like, hold on, you read a thing about some people who knew a guy whose doctor, like, did we verify any of that? And what does this have to do with the election? Well, he came out and he said also that he knows some people. Like, hold on, this is not evidence. It's like people, you had to hold their hand and walk them through the difference between an allegation, a claim, evidence, like saying, I know a guy who heard a guy who knows some people who say they have evidence. That's not evidence. In their mind, it was. So when people say they have evidence, show it to me. Show it to me. I mean, people stormed, the January 6th was people storming the Capitol, trying to overthrow the government because they were certain that there was voter fraud that they had never seen any evidence for. Just show it to us.
Well, I can say I've
are
seen,
you aware of people that you've seen some evidence?
I've seen the evidence that the Christian apologists have to show for their God and for the resurrection and so forth, and it's top shelf. I mean, it's really convincing. It's good. It's good stuff. It's very believable. You can tell that they're not using motivated reasoning or anything like that. No, sir. Negative. Nope.
Well, give me an example.
Oh, would you like an example? Okay. Let me think of something here for you. Golly, how do you explain that they're empty tomb, huh? If the body was not raised. Now see, if Jesus hadn't actually been raised from the dead, then the enemies of Christianity would have fetched the body from the tomb and produced it to them to say, hey, see, he didn't go anywhere. He's dead. That's what would have happened. That's what would have happened. So that's
that reminds me of the John Mulaney stand-up bit. He goes, living in New York, you see a lot of horrible things. He goes, like, the other day, I just saw a wheelchair in an alley flipped over on its side with no one in it. He goes, that's a bad thing to see. He goes, something happened there. You hope it was a miracle. What other possible explanation could you have for an empty wheelchair other than a crippled person got up and walked off? I can't think of anything else. So yeah, that is great evidence.
Yep. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. I'm sure I could actually do more to stillman it, but it's even when you try to stillman it, it still winds up being heinously stupid. So we'll move on, but go ahead and help us out here. Training principle number 2, bring us there. Get us there.
Training principle number 2 was a willing suspension of disbelief. And what that means is when you come from an evangelical background, 'cause, you know, how people interpret the Bible, it ranges from it's all symbolism and allegory to this is actual human history. And if we had a time machine and we went back, you know, we would see David and Goliath and Moses and talking to the burning bush. These aren't allegories or stories. This is what actually happened. And when you make a list of all the what we would normally call fantastic elements, you got angels, you got demons, you've got giants and witches and wizards and prophecy and sorcery and unicorns and dragons and cosmic wonders and flying chariots and all this stuff. You've got talking animals. It sounds a whole lot like the Chronicles of Narnia or Harry Potter. But we understand that these things should be classified in the fiction section at the library or the bookstore, but we go, this is actual history. And if you can believe that all of these things are really real, then how do you draw a line when you hear, for example, that there's a race of lizard people who are drinking the blood of children because they need the energy to keep up their holographic human shield
I relate to that. I get it.
And here's one of them. So Al Gore was one of the lizard people, and he's the one that introduced society to his documentary Inconvenient Truth, which warns us about climate change. Now, if he's a reptilian, then obviously he's lying. So we can ignore climate change science because Al Gore is a lizard person. And you or I hear that and we go, well, that's fucking moronic. And like you lost me at lizard person. But that's, I mean, there's people who reject climate science for a variety of reasons, but there are millions who reject it because Al Gore's a lizard person. And like, if you say animals can talk and demons can possess, absurd, but it could just be a demon from another dimension. And then, wearing Al Gore skin, who's to say it's not? And so many of the QAnon conspiracies, the lizard people stuff, we go, you guys are dealing like in a fanciful realm. It's supernatural stuff. It's like borderline incoherent supernatural stuff. We just write it off as, lunatic talk or whatever. But if you've grown up going, no, once upon a time, this wasn't lunatic at all. This is how Earth was. Okay. Well, what is your benchmark or your metric? What is your personal cutoff point where you go, that can't be true because it's absurd? And when you've been trained properly in the church, you can't really point to one.
Does anyone remember V from the 80s with the lizard aliens? I'm just wondering because that crept up in my puny little head. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, and they did a remake. I didn't watch the original, but they did a remake around like 2012-ish, somewhere around there. It ran for 3 seasons or 4 seasons. And I watched that. And so the whole lizard conspiracy, I don't know how long that's been around. I know David Icke, who was like the precursor to Alex Jones. He was the one that sort of introduced the world to the lizard people. And then when V came out, there were a whole lot of people that said, this is secret messaging because Hollywood uses lies to tell society the truth. It's like, I'm pretty sure they're just doing a remake of this 1980s thing that came out before the lizard people. But no, it's just layers and layers of, on top of the conspiracy.
Lord have mercy. That'll pretty well cover the willing suspension of disbelief. Training principle 3.
3 was things don't have to be logical or even coherent to be true. And this pretty much goes to the contradictions in the Bible, because when you come from the evangelical background, obviously we are trained that the Bible is the inerrant and infallible word of God. And as such, there can't be any inconsistencies or contradictions. And if you think you found one, that's because you're fallible and you don't understand what you're reading. So, a classic example is resurrection morning. What did the women at the tomb, what did they do after they were given their message? Well, if you read Mark, it says they ran and said nothing to anybody because they were terrified. Matthew says they ran and told the disciples because they were overjoyed. And you go, well, which one is it?
Well, but see, so they ran away terrified,
yes.
but then they came to their senses, and yeah.
But like we discussed, God can't be seen, even though a bunch of people said they saw God. He can't. There's in non-biblical terms, if we were reading the New York Times or the Washington Post, these liberal Marxist bastions of socialistic literature, and 2 different authors had reported 2 different stories the same way, the biblical gospel writers did, we'd say, well, I told you they were fake news. How are you going to trust this publication? When we say the exact same thing in the Bible, they go, no, it's not a contradiction. Yeah. And so, like, unless you keep pressing on, I mean, because for some people, just being told no, it doesn't matter. For them, and I mean, this was another conversation that I was having with my father. We were discussing the nativity stories. And, Matthew and Luke's gospel.
Uh-oh. Did I just tap out here? Am I gone? Hey, there you are.
You're here.
I think we're having some momentary connectivity issues.
You want to
still with us there, buddy?
I'm here. I'm waiting for you, buddy.
Okay, there you are.
I'm right here.
The hat.
Got me? There we were.
I got you.
Yeah.
Talking with dear old dad about the.
Where'd I lose you?
Talking with dear old dad about the infancy narrative.
There you go again. Folks, bear with us. We will get our technical difficulties figured out, and we will be back to our regularly scheduled nonsense in just a few seconds. Oh, Derek, where have you gone?
Here I am.
This is... You there? There you are. I see you.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here.
Blink once if you can hear me, and twice if you can't.
I hear you. Dr. Almgren. Folks who are watching,
get this sorted out real quick.
Folks who are watching, I guess Shane and I are disconnected from one another. Are you able to hear and see me? And are you able to see and hear him? I don't think they're able to see me. Okay, Moonshoe says, see you both, but now he gone. All right, now I don't see Shane. So hang with us. Hang with us. Be patient. Let me make sure he should have the link to be able to come back in here. Device not connected. Just me now. All right. All right. Here we go. There you is.
Sorry about that.
It's, it's big guns upstairs. He's not real happy with these shows. I don't know why.
Now you're gone again.
No.
You there? I can see you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. You hear and see me? I hear and see you just fine.
Okay. Where were we?
We were speaking with old Ray Almgren, dear old dad, about the infancy narrative.
Oh, the infancy narratives. Yes. So he was a little unhappy that I had pointed out these inconsistencies, and he had tried offering a number of different solutions, and we like, oh, okay, well, let's plug it in and see if that works. Now, here's why that doesn't work. Here's why it doesn't work. And after we had dismissed all of his options, he said, son, it doesn't have to make any sense. And, there was the pastor, Peter LaRufa, that famously on the internet a few years back, he was given like a talk, and he said, if the Bible were to tell me that 2 + 2 = 5, I wouldn't question it. I would just accept what I was told and figure out I'd work through it later. And so this is a training thing that we get, is even when you're confronted with things that don't make any sense, that's not a good reason to rule them out. And, so many of the conspiracies that were floating around with COVID, they were completely at odds with each other. They were mutually exclusive. And so one example was when we were first given shelter in place orders. Once everybody couldn't come into work and they had some time to themselves, what they determined was that COVID was all caused by 5G towers. And the government wanted everybody in their homes because they were going to put up more 5G towers. And they were installing facial recognition software all over the public. So they would be able to track our every moves once we finally emerged from our shelters. But also the 5G towers they were putting up were going to keep making people get sick forever. So we'd have to keep wearing these masks. And they wanted us to wear the masks all the time because if they could tell us what to wear, then they could control us. And it was just, they want to incrementally control more and more. And if they can get us to wear masks all the time, then that's just one way of them showing their control. And you would go, guys, when we all come out of our hiding places, if everybody is wearing masks, how is the facial recognition software going to work? And remember the scene from There's Something About Mary where Ben Stiller's driving the hitchhiker? And he's like, I got this 7-minute abs. 7-minute abs. And he goes through the whole thing about how he's going to get rich from this. And Ben Stiller's like, well, I mean, that's a $1 million idea, until someone comes around and does 6-minute abs. And his brain short circuit. No, it's not. So that it was like that kind of response to just pointing out something that should have been immediately obvious. You can't have facial tracking software everywhere and also your face covered at all times. Pick one or the other, but you can't have both. And they're like, no, it is both. So we need to rebel against the government and go try to kidnap the governor of our state so this doesn't happen.
Bless their pea-picking hearts. Hey,
Bless 'em.
we're getting close to the top of the hour here, so I do want to. Those are the first 3 principles, and there are 4 more in the book. All of this stuff is
There are 4 more. Yep.
Yeah, the writing is it's incisive, insightful, and downright flipping hilarious. I can't recommend this book enough. Oh, real quick too, while I'm at it, let me go ahead and share my screen and give everyone a little look-see here. Click out of this, and here we are. Conspiracy Christianity, the 7 evangelical training principles that promote wild propaganda, dangerous misinformation, and outlandish conspiracy theories. Looks like we've got this for $9.99 paperback and $16.66 for the hardcover. Is that on purpose?
Yes, it was.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, guys, if you want to go ahead and prepare your super chats, if you have any fun questions or comments or observations, or just want to generally show your support, this is how I make a living. So whatever help and support you can provide would be greatly appreciated. Shane, let me just wrap up this portion at least with a few more questions for you.
Sure. Well, if we're done, are we done discussing the holy book? Because I'll remove my holy headwear.
You can take it. You can take off the holy head.
Okay.
Let it breathe a little bit. There we go. That's a pretty bun you've got there, buddy. Didn't you once work for Didn't you work for a deranged lunatic at one point who might have been at the root of a lot of these conspiracies? I wonder if you can tell us about your experience with that.
I certainly did. My senior year of college down in West Palm Beach, I worked at Mar-a-Lago for Donald Trump. And seeing how like the day-to-day operations, how things were conducted, how he injected himself into situations at the club and could turn a tiny little minuscule nothing into a full-blown catastrophe. When he announced that he was running, I said, all right, I gotta watch this. Because I just had a general rule. I don't really watch TV, and I certainly don't watch the news. I just had like a no news policy, so I didn't follow politics. But when somebody that you know runs for office, you're like, well, this is going to be interesting. And when it's somebody of Trump's ilk, you go, well, this is going to be a magnificent circus fire. I can't miss it. And I was like everybody else, I thought it was just a bunch of hype. He would go for a couple months because it was actually the third time he ran for president. And the other 2 times he's done it, it's been just a marketing ploy. The first time it was for the republication of his Art of the Deal book to drum up sales. And the second time he had just opened a new property and it was to drum up publicity to try to sell units, condo units. So I was like, all right, well, he's got some angle, some marketing angle. But the campaign just kept picking up steam and people kept coming on board. And at one point it was like, oh, crap. I mean, it's an outside shot, but dude's actually got a shot at this. And then that's when I started writing what would become the Trumpland Diary, is just like sort of gentle warnings at first to just the people on my Facebook feed. Guys, I don't think you quite understand what you're in for. The man that you know and love as a business genius from that reality show, he's on the reality show playing a genius because he got offered a TV show because he was down on his luck because he's so bad at actual business. And that's without even getting into all like the personality flaws and mental handicaps and just basic racism, misogyny, uncivility, general incompetency. I knew him. I worked for him. I knew it was going to be a shit show, and I had to write about it.
That's I've got that up on the screen now, guys. The Trumpland Diary, a journal of bigly proportions. I read all of this and reviewed it myself. And again, just as I described Conspiracy Christianity, incredibly insightful, witty, and decisive, and just absolutely hysterical. I cannot recommend your books enough, and it pains me to say that because I'm very much more accustomed to insulting you, but God damn it, this is good shit. What was the incident? Did you describe the incident at the pool? What happened there?
Yes, that was the thing where I realized he was an absolute moron. So my job there, I was like a pool attendant. I was a glorified cabana boy. I'd bring drinks. The people that came in, they were either like the ultra wealthy Palm Beach socialites or celebrities. Hollywood people would come in. Players from the Miami Heat and the Miami Dolphins would come up quite a bit, and we just kind of interact with them and wait on them, bring them whatever they needed. And one day, this older lady, she runs up to our stand and she has got rashes on the insides of both of her elbows and behind both of her knees. And it just like came on suddenly, and she was freaking out and didn't know what was going on. And, we're just asking her questions. How long ago did this, does it hurt? Does it itch? Do we need to call 911? Whatever. And Trump saunters over and he's like, hey, what's going on? And she recounts the story and he goes, oh yeah, I'm very familiar with this. It's sea lice. For those of you that don't know, yes, sea lice is an actual parasite, but when you live at the beach, it's a slang term. When a storm goes off coast and it churns up the water, you get all these like loose jellyfish tentacles and jellyfish larvae. And the lifeguard stands at the beach will put a flag up. They'll put a warning. It just says sea lice warning. It means if you go in the water, you're very likely to get stung with these rashes because it's all over the beach area. And he goes, well, it's sea lice. And we're like, well, the beach is a half a mile away. I know that sea lice, jellyfish larvae, do not migrate from the ocean into your private swimming pool. And he goes, no, I've got many swimming pools. I know, trust me, nobody knows more about sea lice than I do. He goes, we should dump chlorine in the pool. I'm also at the time a lifeguard at the YWCA down the road from our school. And part of my job every morning is to get there early and dump chlorine in the pool a couple hours before people show up. And I said, sir, you cannot dump chlorine into a swimming pool while people are swimming. They could get burned. It's going to smell horrible. No. You're thinking of indoor pools. This is an outdoor pool. Okay, sir, whatever. So he calls the maintenance guy over and tells him to dump the chlorine. And the guy's like, nah, that's horrid. You can't do that. He goes, the smell, and Trump just says, just tell him it's very, very expensive European chlorine. So, I mean, we tried in vain. Yeah, we tried in vain to talk him out of it, and he assured us that nobody knows more about sea lice and chlorine. And so the maintenance man goes around, and he's got a little, like a white styrofoam cup that he's dipping into his chlorine bucket, and he goes around the pool pouring it in. And within 5 minutes, the entire place empties out. And it's, they serve food and drinks down there, and they do like tens of thousands of dollars in business. And everyone just emptied the place out about 4 hours before it was scheduled to close. So I don't know how much money they lost with just in food and drink sales. And there was one lady who had stayed out in the pool while the guy made his way around, and she was out there just kind of hanging out until about 10 or 15 minutes, she starts yelping. And then she makes a beeline for the steps and gets out. And, she ran to the locker room. She took off. Several weeks later, our pool manager tells us that the lady that had been in the pool when they dumped the chlorine sued Mar-a-Lago for $500,000 because she had to go to the ER for like chemical burns from being in there. And when Trump found out that he was getting sued, he came down and he fired the maintenance guy who dumped the chlorine and told him, absolutely do not dump the chlorine. And then the lady who had first showed up with the rash in the first place, she ended up coming back to the club, and she's like, oh, I went to the doctor and it just turned out it was an allergic reaction from my new sunscreen. And that was the whole deal. So it was someone had an allergic reaction to their sunscreen. Trump pinpointed it as being migratory sea lice, which it wasn't, ordered people to do something stupid that wouldn't fix the problem, didn't address the real issue, was, ill-conceived at best, got sued for it, and then blamed it on somebody else and fired them. So, yeah, that was this guy's, if you were writing a book on how to be a bad leader, just that. Do what that guy's doing. So giving him the nuclear football was, oh, please, nobody get an elbow rash. No elbow rashes. we can nuke the elbow rash.
Dear God, the guy's a very stable genius. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but he's very stable. Very stable. Nobody stabilizes as brilliantly as he does, whatever the fuck that means. I'm gonna hit you with one more question, and then we're gonna go to super chats. Should we have any? I don't know that I've noticed any yet, guys. If you do have anything that you can provide in terms of questions, comments, generally support for this podcast, I'd very much appreciate it. But my last question for you, sir, is what are you working on presently?
Wow, I am working on a number of things. I've got another book that's about 3/4 of the way done. That is the autobiography of our pseudo newsboys' trip to China. Have you and I personally talked about that? You know that story?
You've told me about that. Do you want to share that with us?
I will do the 30 seconds to a minute version of it. Yeah. We got back from China in early 90s. My mom had decided it was her God-given divine mission to organize the first ever Christian concert there. And she spent 10 years trying to make it happen because, she was a school teacher and that was it. Didn't know anything about the music industry. And through a bunch of strokes of luck, she had got this Christian group from Australia called the Newsboys to agree to go, got China to agree to let them in and host and pay for the whole thing. And after 10 years of organizing this, they had to cancel at the very last moment for scheduling reasons and told my mom, sorry, we can't go, 2 weeks before the tours were set to go. So my mom hastily found 3 band members up in Pittsburgh where she was living, and she called me down in Florida to play keys and said, find a guitarist. If you want to do this, we're going to pretend that we're the Newsboys and we're going to go to China, and we're not going to tell anybody that we're not the real band. So we had 2 weeks to figure this out, how we're going to do it. And then we went and did it. So that's what I'm trying to finish right now, is that story.
Okay. So you are writing the book on that. I love that you're
Yep.
doing that. That's fantastic. Ladies and gents, so we are at, it's 9:05 now. We started here about 8 o'clock. It was Melody Joy with a, let me pull that up here with the super sticker. Thank you so much as always, Melody. Always love your presence. PRESENCE, or you could go the other route too. Presence. If anyone has anything else, last call for super chats. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. You told us what you're working on presently. Do you have any final words of wisdom for us, Mr. Almgren?
I do. And I stress this, I think, when I did the presentation on it. My reason for attacking, I know that you're on my social media feed all the time, and it seems like it's just ridiculing people, and it does sometimes. That's very, very intentional. But it's more like kind of wanting to shake people awake and go, guys, you're doing something. I don't think you actually realize what it is that you're a part of, and it's having real world consequences. And at the same time, these other people are just looking at what you're doing that is completely inexplicable. And guys, before you call them crazy or psycho or whatever, they've got a reason that makes sense to them. Let me tell you what their good reason is, and then let me tell them why this is not actually the good reason. Because for all the snark, my intention really is to, if we can tamp down, lower the temperature in society just a little bit. That's my goal. And niceties are good, but sometimes you just got to make a whip and flip over some tables and drive people out of the temple. So don't take it too harshly, anybody. It's all with good intent.
Well said, sir. I'm all about the whip and the tables. I don't know if anyone's picked up on that, but I'm about whipping them there in the temple. That's give them the whip. I'm there for it.
Whip it.
Whip it good. All right, guys. Well, Shane, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Come on down to South Carolina and see me sometime, by God. I don't think you're any stranger to the ocean.
No, I'm not. Should I bring my own sea lice, or do you provide them?
I'll provide the sea lice. I know everything. I'm the best with sea lice. I know all about sea lice. So I've got that covered. Don't you worry about that. Hey, and Zachary, thank you for the super sticker, sir. Yep. Come on down and see me.
I would love to, sir.
Okay. Thanks again for being here, Shane. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And remember that this is a Theologica, where religion is fascinating and stupid.